Today we went to our last school visit, and this time we went to the Nueva School in Hillsborough, California. Now, the Nueva School is a school for high potential children. That means that they're really, really smart. And the Nueva School has 50 students per grade level, and it's a K through 9 program. Up until last year, it was a K through 8 program, but now they're trying to develop a high school. So each year, over the next 3 years, they're going to add one more grade level until they have a full high school. So what's so interesting about the Nueva School? Why would we go see them? Well, they're well known for a couple of things, and one of those things is design thinking. The Nueva School has had its own Fab Lab for, I think, about 6 years. It might even be a few years longer than that. And so they have a lot of time under their belt working with design thinking. And it really permeates the curriculum. And let me just give you a couple of examples. So the 4th grade class, which we spoke briefly with the 4th grade teacher, the humanities teacher for 4th grade, and he talked about how in 4th grade they study waves and movement, and during that time they build ancient Greek style boats. And they do that in the Fab Lab. So they're designing them, they are constructing them on 3D laser printers, or they're constructing them with the laser cutter. And then they take them out to the water and they really test them. And recently, the America's Cup was in San Francisco, so the students then took a field trip down to America's Cup and they watched boat races in action. Kind of cool. I also spoke with an 8th grader named Jack, and Jack was busy at his computer when I walked up to him, and he was creating some program. He was coding something. He was actually analyzing data from the World Bank, and he was using coding to try and do that analysis. But I sat down and asked him, so tell me about design thinking. What's the coolest project that you've ever created following the steps of design thinking? And he told me that the best project he'd ever created was a toy. Now remember, with design thinking, one really important part of it is to have empathy for your user. And that means that Jack had to go and interview some people before he designed his toy. So he went out and he interviewed 2 younger kids. And he told me that one of the kids was fairly agreeable and didn't really have any major suggestions for what the toy should be. And another one of his interviewees was very nitpicky, right down to what color a toy should be. Now, the students had some sort of expectations, elements that the toy would need to include, and that came from the teacher. But then they worked on this development of this product over the course of the entire school year. Now, following the creation of this toy, Jack then went on to tell me about his recital project. All 8th graders at Nueva are responsible for a recital project. This is a project that they develop independently throughout the year, and one of the requirements is that it needs to follow one of their passions. And then they need to have 2 mentors out in the real world who are going to guide their work on following that passion throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, they get up, and just like a music recital, they get up and share the research and the work that they've done on their recital project. So Jack's recital project was ham radio. He wanted to learn how to become a ham radio operator. And so he is now invested in that work, and he's found 2 mentors out in the real world. One of them is an EMT. That's an emergency medical tech. So somebody who would be in an ambulance and who would use ham radio. Ham radio is a form of communication that's used by rescue crews. And the other mentor that he found in the community was actually one of the original designers of the iMac. So he's really lucky. He's been paired up he wasn't paired up. He found these people himself, and they are serving as his mentors this year as he experiments with ham radio. And then he told me one other friend of his recital project is to run a marathon. And so when he's working toward that goal all year, he'll be working with mentors, he'll be reading books, he'll be doing research, he'll be running, he'll be preparing, and ultimately he'll run a marathon. And that's his recital project. I really feel like that kind of work will help you find what you want to do with the rest of your life. Another thing a lot of the students at Nueva seemed to be dabbling in was coding. And I already mentioned that Jack was coding. And the kid sitting next to him, I think his name was Reed, he was also doing extensive coding. And in fact, as an eighth grader, he had been coding for 6 years already. So he's, I'm sure, destined for a job in Silicon Valley. But coding, from what the headmaster of Nueva said, is the new foreign language. So at their school, in other words, everybody in the future needs to know how to code. Just like everybody in the future should be able to speak more than one language, well, one of the languages people speak in the future should be a coding language, like Java or C++. There were two other things I saw at the Nueva school which made me perk right up. One of the things that I saw was a music program. In 5th grade, their music program focuses on music of the city. And so they study in each quarter a different city. New Orleans, Detroit, Los Angeles, and they study these different cities, and they study the music scene in each of these cities, and they create music. So we actually got to see a performance of a group of 5th graders. One of them was on a steel drum, one of them was on an electric drum set, one was on a real drum set. There were 3 keyboardists, there were 4 vocalists, there was a saxophonist, a violinist, 2 guitarists, a bass player, and together they created this really groovy music. So while in 5th grade the music program focuses on music of the different cities, in 6th grade they focus on jazz, in 7th grade they focus on pop, and in 8th grade they focus on rock. The last thing which struck me at Nueva was the fact that each kid has to build his or her own fort out in the woods. The school is on 33 acres, and part of that acreage is quite wooded. And literally the kids have to go out and they have to build their own forts. I think that is one of the coolest assignments I have ever heard of. And imagine the math and science that go into creating a tree fort. Or maybe it's not up in the trees, maybe it's down on the ground. But wouldn't that be cool? And not only that, it's just fun. So that's it, guys. That's the end of the school visits. I hope you've enjoyed the tour. I'm literally leaving for the airport to head back to Singapore in about 5 minutes. It's been a pleasure taking you on this journey, and I hope that I've given you some real food for thought. Bye-bye.